Oh, here's a good one. The second super chat is Tim is controlled opposition, saying if Biden turns,
Care Bears.
well, he's got my vote. What a perfect example of what I describe as
Care Bears.
derangement syndrome. Let me elaborate.
I think everybody is just sick of these influencers, these astroturfed influencers and their constant LARPy stunts. I thought I was done making videos for today, but then I saw these two clowns and, well, here we are. I am having to make a video about this because it is so annoying and it is so tiresome. These little stunts. This is Chaya Reichik, the Libs of TikTok lady, with Christy Nome. She says, arrested some criminal illegal aliens with @SecNome this morning. Exclusive footage coming soon. Phoenix, Arizona just became a lot safer. And she's wearing the silly badge. She's with Border Barbie here, who also is driving me insane with these stunts, these photo ops. Whatever this is, it is atrocious. It is not a good look. It's embarrassing for everybody. It's cringe. And I'm just tired of seeing this crap. You know, why not bring in, there are plenty of journalists, like in the independent and alternative media, who have been covering, like, the border issue, right? There are people who've gone down to the border, who filmed there, like, that would make much more sense of being, I guess if you're gonna do these silly photo ops, why not bring in somebody like that? But instead, they bring in the Libs of TikTok chick, Chaya, who is always invited to these events. And Red makes a good point here. He says there's no need to parade influencers for DHS raids. Using social media influencers as PR monkeys screams unserious law enforcement. And on top of that, sprinkle some selfies and make it go viral. To me, this isn't about national security. It is about feeding millions of followers with curated public relations to sanitize immigration failures. You'd think that you guys would have learned from the Care Bears Epstein folder circus at the White House. Apparently not. If you need X and parrot influencer clout to justify policy, maybe your policy doesn't hold up to scrutiny. This tactical cosplay needs to end. You don't need to sell me immigration enforcement PR. Do your jobs. Using state power for social media points should terrify everyone. I agree with that. And Neil says, I'm so sick of these bought and paid for, fake and staged, controlled opposition campaigns that continue to direct people's attention to support the narrative they continue to push. What does Chaya and the DHS Secretary Nome have in common? That's right, their handlers and their money. Sam Parker reminds us of the Epstein Files joke. What is this charade? Literally just put them online. What a pathetic joke. Also, don't notice that both DC Drano and Chaya are hardcore pro-Care Bears, the very people Mr. E was working for. And you guys remember the absurdity of them coming out, these influencers posing with these ridiculous binders that apparently had nothing in it except information that was already publicly available that was even more redacted than the original version. Like, what an embarrassment, what an abject embarrassment. And they didn't even apologize to their viewers, their listeners, their followers, whatever you want to call it. Chaya is a prominent member of the globally powerful Chabad Lubavitch community. She basically runs a Care Bear influence operation via her Libs of TikTok account. In fact, she is partnered with Seth Dillon, another Care Bear who was probably a Care Bear influence operation himself. Below, you can see her taking the Care Bear trip to see Gaza destroyed with another prominent pro-Care Bear influencer, Hillel Fold, who has me blocked. Isn't that lovely? You know, it's just incredibly disturbing, is it not? Um, then we have Tim Pool. He says, just left a meeting with Prime Minister Netanyahu in DC. Interesting discussion. I will discuss more tomorrow night on Timcast. Well, that should be tonight's show. He posted this yesterday. Now, when he first made this post, I thought he was trolling because he does that a lot, okay? I thought, no, that can't be real. But at the same time, it also was something that like wouldn't surprise me at all, given his background, shall we say. So this apparently is real and happened. Tim met with Bibi on Tuesday, Bibi Milikowski, to express, quote, concerns about increased anti-Care Bearism and anti-other Care Bearism in the pro-Trump podcasting space, according to Care Bear Insider. Now, let's actually go to the article real quick. So here's the article. This comes from Chris Menahan with Information Liberation. Tim met with Bibi on Tuesday to express, quote, concerns about increased anti-Care Bearism from Care Bear Insider. Care Bear PM Netanyahu tried to push back against anti-Care Bear trends in the right-wing media world by holding a briefing in the Blair House for podcasters and other media figures, read influencers. Sources in the meeting told Care Bear Insider on Tuesday. Among those in attendance were people like Dave Rubin, Tim Pool, former White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer, writers Bethany Mendel, another Chabad girl, David Harris Jr., influencer Jessica Krause, another one, commentary senior editor Seth Mandel, and Federalist editor-in-chief Molly Hemingway. What is fascinating about this is that none of these individuals who were meeting with an actual war criminal and butcher, okay, a man with blood on his hands, none of them have publicly acknowledged this except Tim. So I find that interesting. In addition to Bibi, his diplomatic advisor Ophir Falk and Care Bear ambassador Yeshiel Leader were also present on the Care Bear side. Now, this article claims that Pool expressed concerns about increased anti-Care Bearism in the pro-Trump podcasting space, according to sources in the room. Pool famously had Kanye West on his podcast, and the rapper walked out mid-interview after Pool pushed back on his commentary. Responding to Pool, Bibi said that is the reason he invited the group to meet with him. Pool argued there is a Qatari op to manipulate social media algorithms to make anti-Care Bearism episodes appear to receive far more views than, say, tips for picking up women in order to incentivize podcasters and YouTubers to promote more anti-Care Bear content. Now, we know that's ridiculous because I have to call them Care Bears just to even exist on this platform. Bibi, however, was non-committal in his response, saying only that it is possible. When asked about Care Bear Insider's report on X, Pool responded, fake. So he's saying that this is fake. He went on to say the story mischaracterized what I said and how the conversation with the war criminal went. I will discuss tonight on IRL. He says, I reached out to every podcaster reported to have taken part in the meeting with Milikowski for comment. Interestingly, Tim is the only one disclosing on X that the meeting even took place. Yeah, isn't that fascinating? Fascinating stuff. So, going back here, though, if this report is true, it means that certain individuals who are speaking out about the Care Bears are putting their career on the line. Meanwhile, Tim is holding private meetings with Bibi on how to shut it all down. Considering Tim's past statements echoing Care Bear government talking points, I wonder if this is the first meeting Tim has had with Bibi, or if the two have also held discussions in the past. I think that is fascinating. That's a very good question. I think that a lot of us would like to know. And just to give you an idea on this, right? Here is a clip of Tim, who had been fear-mongering about Hamas sleeper cells in the US and plugging this company that sells emergency food storage. And you can see the article he has pulled up right here. McCarthy concerned of sleeper cells. It's just ridiculous. So take a listen here.
I can talk about the foreign policy elements and what we are witnessing right now. The deployment of troops, the deployment of a rocket system. I hope you are taking your precautions, picking up your emergency food. You know, we've shouted out safeandreadymeals.com in the past.
So he just goes seamlessly transitions into plugging the sponsor after fear-mongering about these non-existent sleeper cells. Tim says donating money to humanitarian relief efforts in Palestine is actually supporting T because, quote, the Palestinian people vote for Hamas. There hasn't been an election in Gaza since 2006.
Stand the argument that Palestine is not Hamas, but I do kind of think that's a bit naive. Because if Joe Biden says, I'm going to give $100 million to the people of Palestine, we know where that money's really going.
It's going to get confiscated by Hamas.
Oh, okay. Sure thing. This is just ridiculous. So here is Tim talking about the race with Jamal Bowman. So Bowman infamously spoke out about the Care Bear Mafia, and they threw millions of dollars into his opponent, into backing his opponent to get him out of office. This is what they do. This is how they influence American politics. You would think that this is something Tim would be concerned about and interested in, because surely if it was China, right, if it was the China lobby who was dumping millions of dollars into a primary opponent of somebody, Tim would say, well, that's foreign influence and foreign meddling in America's elections. So take a listen.
Work like that, but it definitely does. Holy crap. I call this
Care Bears.
Management syndrome. Bowman lost because of
Care Bears
voters. That's it. But you see what they do. The conflation between Israel.
Yep, that's it. That's just it, right? And Jake says, Tim is okay with a small foreign nation spending $14 million on a small political race. Anyone who wants to continue to allow the Care Bears to bribe our politicians and media is an enemy of America and needs to be treated as such. If Russia or China had an unregistered lobby, I would feel the exact same. And I agree with that. I would too. But that's the difference though, right? So here we have this. Tim, quote, "It's not because Care Bears did a PSYOP campaign, dude. That's ridiculous." The New York Times. The Care Bear government literally ran a PSYOP campaign. Tim never covered this story. Tim, you have become Bill Maher when it comes to the Care Bear Nation, arrogant and uninformed. That is unlike you. Snap out of it. Well, I would say that is exactly like him. Confidently uninformed. Care Bears secretly target U.S. lawmakers with an influence campaign on Gaza. The Care Bears Ministry of Diaspora Affairs ordered the operation, which used fake social media accounts urging U.S. lawmakers to fund the Care Bears military, according to officials and documents about the effort. Again, if that was China, if that was Russia, he would have a problem with it. And this could be chalked up to being a troll post he makes. I don't work for the Care Bear Nation, but with all the spam on X, I'm starting to consider it. I see it as more of kind of like a tacit admission that maybe there's some kind of relationship there. I don't know. Um, Karthik says, I'm noticing a pattern with prominent right-wing influencers like Patrick Bet-David and Tim Pool. They squirm and deflect when the Care Bear Nation is brought up on their shows with a a questioning face emoji. And yes, exactly. This I also found interesting. Tim Pool, just 3 days before 10/7 changed the Middle East forever, says he is quote-unquote irritated because people won't stop talking about the Care Bear Nation.
It's so annoying. They'll, like, I'll keep it vague, but in the past, there'd be people, like, in a chat room, and they'd say something like, hey, did you guys try this new pizza restaurant that opened in Brooklyn? And this is actually, I'm talking about, I'm being vague, but this is directly related to the work that I'm doing. And then someone would be like, yeah, it was really good. You know, I've had pizza all over the world. Really, where at?
Care Bears.
You know, the thing about it is
Care Bears.
And then I'm just like, you know what, dude? There are people who are so desperate and obsessed with just
Care Bears.
And I'm like, I get it, man. But the bigger issue I'm talking about is all foreign policy and all.
Okay, but no, that's not true, though. I mean, this is part of his deflecting on this comment. That little anecdote he described, I don't believe that has happened. That is an absurd thing. People are pretty open in chat when they talk about stuff like that. So I just think that this is ridiculous. And no, you can see he visibly becomes, he visibly seethes anytime anybody mentions the Care Bear Nation. Now, I thought this was very interesting. I don't know how many people are familiar with this, so I wanted to bring it to you guys. Jeremy says, linked to key background on the Tim Pool Cambridge Analytica Russian Care Bear operation based out of the UK network. Russian and Care Bear intelligence was deep in the Tim Pool media fold years and years before the Tenant media op. Now, this is from 2021. I find this interesting. Kaiser was Pool's roommate. Brittany Kaiser from Cambridge. So that is responding to this post. It says, in 2017, so she says, let's back up though. I first met Pool in Ferguson. I was 19. I knew of Vice, had no idea who Pool was, but freelancers I ran with did. One of them, who turned out to be an FBI informant, told me it would be a great career move to work with Pool when he approached me unsolicited. An FBI informant. Is that not fascinating? I think it is. So she goes on, in 2017, I really wanted to cover J20 in DC, but money was my only obstacle. Tim Pool paid for my plane ticket and I stayed with a friend. He asked me to film the deplorable, saying his roommate Brittany Kaiser would get me in as her plus one. I didn't know who she was, but I agreed. So this is fascinating. Cambridge was one of the companies under SCL Group. This is a company that has been around for 25 years. Originally, they started in defense. Once they found out how successful that was, they realized that that was very useful in elections. And here's Brittany Kaiser, Cambridge Analytica whistleblower, releasing troves of new files from the data firm. So she was working for Cambridge when she was, I guess, living with Tim. By her own telling, Kaiser's job title at Cambridge was overinflated. She said she was essentially a glorified salesperson and did not have access to what she called the company's controversial data sets. Nor did she have inside knowledge of how the group received its Facebook data, which happened before she worked there. If you were to only read her remarks on paper, you might think her naive. In person, though, she is sardonic and razor sharp. Not the kind of woman you'd expect to get caught up in this this mess. As we speak, I keep wondering if she knows more than she is letting on. But Kaiser has good reason to choose her words carefully. She is aware people are suspicious about her role in the scandal, and she thinks she's made powerful enemies by testifying before Parliament. I think she's being careful. I think she's telling the truth, says campaign organizer and tech entrepreneur Paul Hilder, who met Kaiser last year and encouraged her to speak out about what she saw. So that's fascinating that he was roommates with Brittany Kaiser, of all people, from Cambridge Analytica. What are the odds? And then he thought it was funny when TikTok was censoring a pro-Palestinian message as hate speech. And Gabriel says, hey guys, remember when journalists used to report about suppression of free speech and censoring like it's a bad thing? Not Mockingbird Tim. He celebrates it because Care Bearism, because of the Care Bear Nation. Paulie says, sponsored propaganda alert, pro Care Bear. One of the videos Tim made that appears to have been on behalf of Tenet Media was a pro Care Bear rant that attacked Nick. Pool features a tweet posted by Tenet on June 15th, 2024. So that is interesting. Strange Days says, the Care Bear Nation has dirt on Pool. They have a picture of him with his beanie off and they are blackmailing him with it. This was ridiculous too. In January, he did this video with Ben Shapiro where they talked about the TikTok ban, which was being done on behalf of the Care Bear Nation. Jake says, this is pathetic, and it makes it clear that Tim also works for the Care Bears, not America. Flashback, Tim claimed that there was quote-unquote zero evidence Bibi and the IOF had prior knowledge to 10/7 and let it happen for the Care Bear Nation's own benefit while interviewing Preston Para. And we now know for a fact that, in fact, they did. They knew a year in advance. They were warned again 3 days in advance by Egypt. There was stand-down orders issued. Even Jonathan Pollard, of all people, called it an inside job. The head of the Shin Bet just said the same thing. Bibi just had him removed. So, no, like, this is, Boltzmann Booty has presented documented evidence after documented evidence, mostly coming, by the way, from the Care Bear press, that actually confirms that they did have advanced knowledge.
Ask them.
By all means, I encourage people to investigate and report on things like this, but forgive me if I don't choose to use the peoplesvoice.tv as a credible source.
Well, Lauren Witzke reported on it, though, and she was just here. And
that doesn't mean anything either. Like, the issue is, anyone can write any article about any number of conspiracies as to...
Wow. So what he's doing there is basically he's insinuating that it's conspiratorial to suggest that the Care Bear Nation benefited from 10/7, though we know they did. They're getting more money from America, more military technology. We just reported on the other day they got a new THAAD system. So it's not a conspiracy. Tim tells a guest he has Care Bear derangement syndrome. This is one of his favorite little quips.
Yeah, and for sure. But Israel
Care Bear
is intentionally dragging us into this war, and also Israel.
Care Bear.
I think you got
Care Bear
derangement syndrome.
Okay, well,
I call
Care Bear.
Palestine derangement
okay,
syndrome.
then let me. Well, so first of all,
Care Bears.
this is on two separate. Do you know the story of
Care Bear.
wiretapping the White House and blackmailing Bill Clinton?
I bet he shut that down right away.
No.
Okay, well, this is.
And no, he doesn't know it. So he's ignorant, he's uninformed, arrogantly thinks that he is smarter than every single person in the room. That's his typical personality, and it's just incredibly off-putting. Throwback, Ian brings up the USS Liberty incident on IRL. Tim quickly shuts
The USS
that down.
Liberty that you mentioned earlier. This
Oh,
is
God, no, don't even do it.
1960.
Destiny says, oh no, don't even do it. Destiny, another Hasbara.
Let's go there.
During the
Care Bears.
6-Day War, they accidentally torpedoed or they shot down a.
Yeah, but depending on who you
It's
ask, it's not an accident. That's like a whole can of worms of
Wild.
weird
Care Bears.
stuff.
Let's jump to this next story.
Let's jump to this next story. Let's shut it down. Of course. Permabula says Tim is an intelligence asset. I'm starting to believe that is more than likely true after what we just read about the FBI informant and the Brittany Kaiser Cambridge Analytica roommate here. 7C says Tim claims he didn't even know he was getting paid by Russia through Tenet Media. Not sure he's the best source for things like geopolitical insights or really any insights for that matter. Being aware of the Care Bears meddling in American governance is not because of Qatar. It is because of the access to information that proves it to be true. But Tim gets paid, allegedly, to push talking points, essentially. Sam Hyde just asked the other day what the Mossad has on Tim.
What does Mossad have on RFK Jr.? What do they have on Tim Pool? Are they paying Tim Pool? Who funds Tim Pool?
Should have looked into Rabbi Shmuley. It's a name that you can't ignore.
If Tim Pool makes money through super chat donations, that's where they make. Oh, they made 1.3 million over a 5-year period.
Wow. Wasn't he getting like 400,000 a month just from Tenet?
Did you see him complaining about not being able to monetize? He has like 30 employees or something, and he wasn't able to figure out how to make money. Isn't he huge? Why does he censor himself about
Care Bears?
I keep being told about.
We all know why. Okay. Tim meeting with Bibi today, accusing other people of taking Qatari money. You can't make this stuff up. Well, indeed. Imagine the look on Bibi's face when Tim Pool started telling him about the Qatari-occupied government. And Chris says the idea that opposition to the Care Bears genocide is a Qatari op is a Care Bear op that was popularized by the Care Bears diaspora ministry last year. Qatar behind anti-Care Bearism influencers like Dan Blazarian, Chickley tells Post. Diaspora Affairs and Combating Anti-Care Bearism Minister Amichai Chikil spoke to the Post about Alaya, rising anti-Care Bearism, and the role of social media in perpetuating Care Bear hatred. While Chickley noted it was too early to tell, he suggested there might be, quote, a Qatari effort behind some of these influencers and the changes they've made in their opinions. I have said from the beginning of the war, cooperation with Qatar regarding the hostages is a grave mistake because Qatar should have been pressed first and foremost by the Americans and by the Care Bears to pay the price for their support of Hamas. So that's where that idea comes from. And so, to just wrap it up, I think that everybody is kind of sick of these influencers, sick of their LARPing, sick of their ops, sick of their astroturfed nonsense, sick of seeing them being brought in for this exclusive access and privilege so that they can do these limited hangouts and public relations for the government. You should always remain skeptical of power, even if it's your quote-unquote team that is in there. And that's part of what these influencers are paid to perpetuate, by the way, the fake two-party duopoly nonsense. We all know that these are just two wings of the same corrupt bird. They have the same corporate donors and the same handlers behind the scenes. There's APEC in the background, puppeteering. So we all know that by now. And I think that we would like these people to just go away. But alas, they are being propped up, so they won't. But I'm interested to know what you guys think, and I hope you all have a good day. Whee!